On Saturday, June 5, 1976, at 7:30 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, MDT, a muddy leak appeared, suggesting sediment was in the water, but engineers did not believe there was a problem. By 9:30 a.m. the downstream face of the dam had developed a wet spot which began to discharge water at 20 to 30 cubic feet per second, 0.57 to 0.85 m3/s, and the embankment material began to wash out. Crews with bulldozers were sent to plug the leak, but were unsuccessful. Local media appeared at the site, and at 11:15 officials told the county sheriff's office to evacuate downstream residents. Work crews were forced to flee on foot, as the widening gap, now larger than a swimming pool, swallowed their equipment. The operators of two bulldozers caught in the eroding embankment were pulled to safety with ropes. At 11:55 a.m., Mountain Daylight Time, UTC 1755, the crest of the dam sagged and collapsed into the reservoir. 2 minutes later the remainder of the right bank third of the main dam wall disintegrated. Over 2 million cubic feet per second, 57,000 m3/s, of sediment-filled water emptied through the breach into the remaining 6 miles, 10 kilometers, of the Teton River Canyon, after which the flood spread out and shallowed on the Snake River Plain. By 8 p.m. that evening, the reservoir had completely emptied, although over 2/3 of the dam wall remained standing. Study of the dam's environment and structure 9 placed blame for the collapse on the permeable loess soil used in the core and on fissured, cracked rhyolite in the abutments of the dam that allowed water to seep around and through the earth-filled dam. The permeable loess was found to be cracked. It is postulated that the combination of these flaws allowed water to seep through the dam and led to internal erosion, called piping, that eventually caused the dam's collapse. An investigating panel had quickly identified piping as the most probable cause of the failure, then focused its efforts on determining how the piping started. 2 mechanisms were possible. The first was the flow of water under highly erodible and unprotected fill, through joints in unsealed rock, beneath the grout cap, and development of an erosion tunnel. The second was cracking caused by differential strains, or hydraulic fracturing of the core material. The panel was unable to determine whether one or the other mechanism occurred, or a combination. The fundamental cause of failure may be regarded as a combination of geological factors and design decisions that, taken together, permitted the failure to develop. A wide-ranging controversy ensued from the dam's collapse. According to the Bureau of Reclamation, bore engineers assess all reclamation dams under strict criteria established by the Safety of Dams Program. Each structure is periodically reviewed for resistance to seismic stability, internal faults, and physical deterioration. For the Dam Safety Program identified 2 other dangerous dams, Fontanelle, which very nearly failed like the Teton Dam when it was filled, and again in May 1985, and the Jackson Lake Dam, which would have failed during an earthquake on the nearby Teton Fault. Deaths, damage, and property claims. Teton Dam ruins in 2004. Teton Canyon ends approximately 6 miles below the dam site, where the river flows onto the Snake River Plain. When the dam failed, the flood struck several communities immediately downstream, particularly Wilford, at the terminus of the canyon, Sugar City, Salem, Hibbard, and Rexburg. Thousands of homes and businesses were destroyed. The small agricultural communities of Wilford and Sugar City were wiped from the river bank. 5 of the 14 deaths attributed to the flood occurred in Wilford. The similar community of Teton City, on the south bank of the river, is on a modest bench and was largely spared. 1 Teton resident was fishing on the river at the time of the dam failure and was drowned. An elderly woman living in Teton City died as a result of the evacuation. One estimate placed damage to Hibbard and Rexburg area, with a population of about 10,000, at 80% of existing structures. The Teton River flows through the industrial, commercial and residential districts of North Rexburg. A significant reason for the massive damage in the community was the location of a lumber yard directly upstream. When the floodwaters hit, thousands of logs were washed into town. Dozens of them hit a bulk gasoline storage tank a few hundred yards away. The gasoline ignited and sent flaming slicks adrift on the racing water, leavened the force of the logs, and cut lumber, and the subsequent fires practically destroyed the city. The floodwaters traveled west along the route of the Henry's Fork of the Snake River, around both sides of the Men and Beauties, significantly damaging the community of Roberts. The city of Idaho Falls, even further down on the floodplain, had time to prepare. At the older American Falls Dam downstream, engineers increased discharge by less than 5%. Before the flood arrived, 12 that dam held, and the flood was effectively over, but tens of thousands of acres of land near the river were stripped of fertile topsoil. 5. The force of the failure destroyed the lower part of the Teton River, washing away riparian zones and reducing the canyon walls. This seriously damaged the stream's ecology and impacted the native Yellowstone cutthroat trout population. The force of the water and excessive sediment also damaged stream habitat in the Snake River and some tributaries as far downstream as the Fort Hall bottoms. After the dam's collapse, debris cleanup began immediately and took the remainder of the summer. Rebuilding of damaged property continued for several years. Within a week after the disaster, President Gerald Ford requested a $200 million appropriation for initial payments for damages, without assigning responsibility for Teton Dam's failure. 13. The Bureau of Reclamation set up claims offices in Rexburg, Idaho Falls, and Blackfoot. By January 4, 1977, disaster victims filed over 4,800 claims totaling $194 million. By that date, the federal government paid 3,813 of those claims, $93.5 million. Originally scheduled to end in July 1978, the claims program continued into the 1980s. At the end of the claims program in January 1987, the federal government had paid 7,563 claims, for a total amount of $322 million. No plans have been made for rebuilding the Teton Dam, but its reconstruction has been brought up on at least one occasion.